Hey, Teddy K here for the Best Buy blog, and in this video review, we take a look at not one but two of Samsung's latest Galaxy smartwatches, the Galaxy Watch 5 and the Galaxy Watch 5 Pro. There's a whole lot of familiarity with the Galaxy Watch 5 and Watch 5 Pro, but let's put the naming conventions into perspective for a second. So with the Galaxy Watch 4 and 4 Classic, the Classic was your standard classic Galaxy smartwatch, whereas the regular Watch 4 was a replacement to the Watch 4 Active. So now with the Watch 5 Pro, the Watch 5 Pro essentially replaces the Watch 4 Classic, and the Watch 5 replaces the Watch 4. Make sense? Okay. So the reason for this is because Samsung is trying to at least angle these watches in slightly different directions. Now I tried both, I tested both, and I tested the Pro first and then I got to the regular Watch 5. There's not a dramatic difference. Whatever Samsung might have in mind here, I'm speculating of course, is probably going to take another maybe a year or two before it really starts to diverge. But right now what you have is you have two watches that perform very similarly, offer a lot of the same features, have the same software, much of the same hardware, with some different tweaks as far as design and hardware goes. Okay, so for example, the Watch 5 Pro, titanium body. Here the Watch 5, regular Watch 5 has an aluminum body. This comes in a 40 and 44 millimeter size. The Pro is only a 45 millimeter. You have sapphire glass protecting the screens on both watches, and they both have the same internals essentially, which is, except for the battery size of course, but the Exynos processor is the same, and so is the RAM and the storage space. So you have same amount of storage space, same RAM. I mean, effectively these two watches are going to function the same way. Not going to last the same way. I'm going to start with battery life first because I think that puts a lot of this into perspective. So battery life with the Pro, you're looking at about 3 days tops. You're not going to get beyond that, but I think 2 days is actually the more common limit that you're going to hit, largely because I think with moderate or modest usage, that's more or less going to be the benchmark. If you're using it more heavily, you can still get to 2 days, but it largely depends on what you're doing. So if you're using a lot of the GPS tracking, the GPS is constantly on, you're getting a lot of notifications, you're doing phone calls, you're using maps, you're just using the watch for a lot of different things, whatever it may be, that's naturally going to whittle the battery down. But you're definitely going to get beyond 24 hours, even in those cases. But beyond 2 days, you basically have to do very, very little with the watch in that case. The regular one is at a 2-day limit. I would you're not going to get beyond 2 days really with the regular watch, but you could get 24 to 36 hours on regular usage. So naturally, the Pro is going to have an advantage in how long it lasts, being a bigger watch with a bigger battery. But other than that, it's just a matter of degree based on how long they last and what it is you're doing with them. Now, when it comes to what you're doing with them, well, the exercise tracking is very, very similar. So all the activity tracking, the exercise tracking, nothing is really dramatically different here, not only between the two watches, but also compared to the Galaxy Watch 4 models. You have over 90 exercises available, about a half dozen of which will track automatically once you've been active for 10 minutes doing that activity or exercise, whereas the other ones you have to manually start and stop them. Again, nothing different. If you've used the Galaxy Watch before, you'll know exactly how that process works and how to apply everything. And all your settings, especially if you're upgrading from a previous watch to this new one, they'll all be saved anyway. As a tracker, I found that accuracy is more or less the same as it was before. I don't know that there was a huge improvement in any particular way. If there was, it was highly iterative and nothing that I felt was a leap forward in any particular way. I thought the exercise tracking was the same. The heart rate tracking, I think heart rate monitoring was largely the same. There might be a slight improvement though, simply because the sensors underneath seem to be a little bit more sensitive. There is a skin temperature sensor that has been built in here. That is a first for Samsung smartwatches, but as of this review and over the time that I was testing it, it was not active. So I can't tell you how well it works. The SpO2 sensor for measuring blood oxygen works fine. That's going to be active naturally, especially while you're sleeping. And sleep tracking, again, a minor improvement there, but it seems to be just a slightly more accurate maybe than it was before. So with health tracking and fitness tracking kind of going hand in hand here, because you see all that data in Samsung Health. You could use Google Fit, by the way, I should point that out, but it doesn't integrate quite as well as Samsung Health does. So the tracking is fine. And even if you use the Pro, by the way, you'll have access to something called GPX routes. These are files that you can get from Samsung Health or Strava. Basically, it is setting or saving a route that you can then apply to the watch so that you have access to that at any time, regardless of reception, signal, whatever. You have access to that route at any point in time. So if you're hiking and cycling, those routes can be active. Those files can be active at any time right now. It's not clear when Samsung will expand on that to add other exercises, but it is something, again, if you're really hardcore about that sort of thing, it's worth trying. A quick note about Wear OS, and that is an evolutionary thing going on with these watches, because Samsung, having adopted Wear OS in the Galaxy Watch 4 and Watch 4 Classic, is continuing on here with the two Watch 5 models. Wear OS is a work in progress. I think a lot of us can agree on that, but it seems to be coming together better, or at least faster than it was before. For example, I found that there was a pretty good integration here with notifications, phone calls, the way apps are available, the way apps work, the way the watch integrates with the phone. There is something of a more fluid experience that's going on with how all those pieces work. I would say it's akin to how I'm sure an Apple Watch user would feel with an iPhone. This is kind of similar, and of course, because Samsung phones and this are going to work a little more seamlessly, if you are someone who has a Samsung phone and you're using a watch like this, I think you're going to feel that kind of synergy as well. But you don't have to have a Samsung phone to use this. You just have to have an Android phone. This will not work with an iPhone and at all, but if it'll work with any Android phone that is compatible. So whether it's a Pixel or some other brand, you're not going to have a problem. Just as long as you download Samsung Health or Google Fit, you will be good to go. A couple of key points also when it comes to health that we should talk about, which is in Canada, the blood pressure monitor and ECG, the electrocardiogram features, are approved. So they will work. You can calibrate the watch so that it actually measures those things for you. You will need an actual blood pressure monitor to calibrate that feature on the watch, and you will need to do it every 28 days. Again, disclaimer, this is not for anybody under 22 years old, and the data or the results that you get from it are not meant to be a replacement or something to stand in for medical advice. In other words, I look at it more like an early warning system. So if something seems off and it seems consistent, then maybe go to your doctor and say, hey doc, this is the information that I'm getting from this device. Maybe we run some tests with you and see if they coincide. So the features are cool, they work, they're available, but again, it's not like any, I think, health metric coming from a smartwatch, not just this one. It's something that you have to take, I think, with a grain of salt unless there's maybe some consistency or something seems really off. And of course, you listen to your body as well. So I'm just going to end this by pointing out that it is not necessary to upgrade from the Watch 4, either Watch 4 model to this. I think the fact that the physical bezel is missing does change the calculus a little bit here. The Watch 4 Classic, of course, retains that. All Watch 5 models get rid of it. So if you like that physical rotating bezel because of how precise it was, I certainly was one of those. You have a digital bezel to work with here, which is not as good. It's kind of cool, you feel the haptic feedback, but unfortunately it's just not as precise. And so I found myself swiping on the screen way more than I would ever use the digital bezel. I use it a little bit more on the Pro because of the indent that covers the watch face, that covers the screen. So you kind of feel like you're touching something and you're moving something when you're doing it, but it's just not the same as the physical bezel. But that aside, other than that, functionally speaking, there's not a huge leap forward here. So if you have a Watch 4, stick with it, keep it. But if you have anything earlier than a Watch 4, this is going to feel like a whole different experience. Watch 3, of course, was Tizen based, and Wear OS being adopted with the last generation. If you're going from a Tizen-based Samsung smartwatch to this, I think you're going to notice that a lot of things will look familiar, but they're not going to function the same way. And that's one of I think, the key considerations if you are looking to upgrade from an older smartwatch to something like this. And that's my review of the Samsung Galaxy Watch 5 Pro and the Watch 5. For the Best Buy blog, I'm Teddy K. Thanks for watching.